Most of us, off the tops of our heads, would say that art has something to do with painting or music, that it is something best left to museums and concert halls. But art is more than paints applied to canvas or notes skillfully arranged. It is our personal statement about how we live our lives, a constant striving to do our best. Art is our proclamation we were here, that we existed. Competition, the pitting of man against man in sport, produces some of our most beautiful and meaningful art. And nowhere is this more evident than in funny car racing. From the special images we carry within us to the struggle to win, the sport is rich in art. Music is an interpretation of our world through notes, and the well-tuned nitro engine running on the ragged edge produces a melody as soothing, as meaningful as Beethoven. A symphony of mechanical notes and chords that pulls at us, draws us nearer to art.
Did you hear that thing change tunes? Nothing?
As beautifully shaped and soulful as any statue, the funny car is a rolling sculpture of metal and fiberglass, a testament that when we seek to have form follow function, art exists, and it is at its most glorious when done to perfection. But because all art ultimately lies in its creation, the concepts that give shape to the physical, and not in the medium we choose to work with, art can only exist where we exist, striving to create it. Art is our soul song, a poetry of life that lives in all we touch. It is the artistry of human endeavor, the struggle for perfection, our seeking the moment we proclaim ourselves alive, that, in the end, make funny car racing an art form. And because it is an art, funny car racing provides us with lessons and cues about how we can seek more in our own art. Diamond P presents Fabulous Floppers 2, The All-Stars, a story of the people who take funny car racing to its outer limits in search of its artistry. It was during the first years of Detroit's muscle car era that funny cars were born. On the drag strip, the car companies promoted their best and brightest. They called the machines stock cars, but with altered wheelbases and high-output engines, there was very little about these cars that was stock. Next came the title experimental, which was closer to what the cars were becoming, rolling laboratories for testing racers' theories. Fuel injectors, fiberglass bodies, tube chassis, nitromethane and superchargers. The search for faster and faster soon produced the first of the modern funny cars, brutish beasts that terrified their drivers as often as they thrilled fans. Their hybrid nature, part dragster, part stock car, made them orphans, a class without a home. By 1970, the tire-smoking duels of thunder that highlighted funny car racing were a fixture at major national events. The class finally accepted by the sanctioning bodies with an eliminator category all its own. And with the cars came a new breed of heroes, people who would leave their marks on the sport as drivers and crew chiefs. When Ed the Ace McCullough drove his funny car to victory at the NHRA U.S. Nationals in 1971, the overall shape and character of the cars had stabilized. But development continued as racers pushed technology in the eternal quest for quicker and faster. By 1988, the typical funny car had grown into a strange beast, a heady blend of brains and brawn. Sophisticated technology meets explosive power. Seeking a way to harness almost 4,000 raging horses, racers had turned to multi-stage lock-up clutches, advanced computer monitoring systems, keeping tabs on all aspects of the car's performance, and wind tunnel-shaped aerodynamic bodies. The funny car of 1988 seems eons removed from the first machines to carry that name, but the spirit of the class remains. Unlimited racing where anything goes. And 25 plus years later, funny cars are still among the most popular quarter-mile stars, thrilling fans and displays of finesse and control that almost defy the laws of physics. But funny car racing is an unexact science, and there are times when the explosive anger of these machines overwhelms their drivers. Funny cars are just tubing and metal and fiberglass. It takes people to bring them to life, and it takes a special breed of person to accept the challenge the cars present, to explore the boundaries of their performance. Funny cars are a stage upon which the true stars of the sport, the racers, act out their dramas. A subtle and deft touch, a knowledgeable eye. These are the tools of the modern funny car crew chief. In an age where the performance of the cars has gotten closer and closer, it takes a creative mind, a thinker, a tinkerer, to exact a few more thousands, a couple of more miles per hour.
It's quite surprising how many different ways there are to skin a cat, and these combinations in these cars, some of them are way different than what we run, and still they'll run within 1/100th of a second, or even better than us sometimes. So it's pretty surprising how you can, like I say, skin the cat all in different ways.
And as the crew chiefs perfect their art and the cars become more consistent, the role of the driver has grown. To race and win at the pinnacle of the sport takes a driver committed to his art, to the pursuit of doing whatever it takes from the cramped belly of the beast to be the first across the finish line each time he climbs into the cockpit.
Nowadays, when you go to hire a driver, you're not really concerned about if he's a good guy or not. You're concerned about how quick he is off the starting line. What's his reaction time?
The all-stars of funny car racing are a diverse group, ranging from 20-year veterans to relative newcomers, from seasoned professionals to hobbyists. They include people like Kenny Bernstein, Dale Armstrong, Mark Oswald, Paul Candies, Leonard Hughes, Pat Austin, John Force, Austin Coyle, Don Prudhomme, Ed McCullough, Bernie Federley, Bruce Larson, Roland Leong, Johnny West, Jim Head, Mike Dunn, Joe Pisano, and Scott Coletta. Scott is one of the growing group of second-generation racers. His father, Connie Coletta, is one of the sport's earliest heroes, a man who has raced and won in both Top Fuel dragsters and funny cars. For Scott, growing up in the sport provided him with the opportunity to learn the art of fuel racing at an early age. Connie Coletta was crew chief for Shirley Muldowney in 1977. the year she won the first of her 3 Winston World Championships. For Scott, it was an introduction to the high-pressure world of NHRA competition, and once bitten by the racing bug, he committed himself full-time to the sport.
Summer vacation, I'd go racing and then have to go back to school, but full-time basically when I got out of school, like 18.
Scott's driving career began in Pro Comp Eliminator, wheeling an alcohol dragster. In 1983, he successfully made the move up to Top Fuel. As part of a 2-car team sponsored by Coletta Flying Services, Scott had an outstanding rookie year. Both he and Connie finished in the top 10 of the Winston standings, a first for a father-son duo. Competing on equal footing with some of the sport's top names, Scott proved he would be a force to reckon with in the years to come. In 1985, the Coletta team traded in Scott's dragster for a funny car. The very nature of the 2 classes requires a driver to almost relearn the art of driving. From the view from the cockpit to the car's handling characteristics, the 2 types of race machines present a driver with differing problems to overcome. For Scott, the transition was like a good news, bad news joke. At times, he could be as competitive as the top drivers, but there were teething problems, often quite extreme.
At first it was hard. You can't see, they put the body down, you know, you get a little claustrophobic and things like that, but after I got used to it and comfortable and it quit blowing up on me, I like it. I work on the car a lot myself, you know, as much as any of them, more than most of the guys out there, so I try and have more control over it if I found out what it did so it doesn't happen again. I've been affiliated with a couple of world championship teams. My dad's been world champion a couple times in different sanctioning bodies. Shirley I worked with her when she was world champion. You know, it's nice to win. You know, you get a little taste of it, especially if you can get the whole taste yourself, it's nice.
Another second-generation driver successfully carrying on the family tradition is Mike Dunn. Mike's father is Big Jim Dunn, one of funny car racing's earliest stars.
When I was about 14, he decided to take a family vacation. We went on tour on the Midwest and East Coast for 6 weeks, and that's when I decided that this was what I wanted to do, you know. He wanted me to do something legitimate and be a accountant or something, but I wanted to go drag racing.
Mike's greatest successes as a driver have come for Joe Paisano. Owner of a business manufacturing engine components, Joe approaches the sport as more a pastime than a profession.
Yes, it is a hobby because it's not a profession for me. And the people that help me, we just have a good time. And Gary Slusher has been a friend of mine for the last 25 years. So him and I and my brother Frankie just kind of hang out together and do it as a fun.
Paisano has been involved in drag racing for almost 30 years, and yet as the 1985 NHRA season began in Pomona, California, he was still looking for his first national event win. With driver Al Segrini, Paisano's JP1 advanced to the finals, matched against Dale Poldy. The year before, Segrini had won the Winter Nationals, fireballing his way across the finish line to defeat Tim Gross. In a blaze of sparks, Segrini won the Winter Nationals, earning Paisano his first Oscar. The pairing of Mike Dunn and Joe Paisano produced the fastest funny car in drag racing. Throughout the summer and fall of 1987, the two progressively pushed the top speed of funny cars upward. At the NHRA Summer Nationals in mid-July, the two officially set the record at 270 miles per hour. A month and a half later, they raised the record to 274 miles per hour, running as fast as 278 miles per hour at the NHRA U.S. Nationals. A month after that, Mike and Joe permanently etched their names into the history books when the JP1 Special became the first funny car to run 280 miles per hour.
When we were running fast, I'd run like 1,000 feet in low gear, and I put in high gear, and it just keep on pulling. And then when you pull the chutes, and it about rips you right through the shoulder harnesses, that's when you know you went fast.
Record-setting performance comes at a premium, a greater risk of something going wrong. Mike rapidly learned this lesson in '83 when he was driving for car owner Roland Leong. Dunn had notched his first national event win 2 years earlier in Roland's car, but in '83, disaster superseded victory. At the Winston World Finals, Mike literally neutralized the car when the crankshaft broke. Earlier that year, in qualifying for the NHRA Spring Nationals, Dunn rode a fiery mount through the catch nets at the end of the track.
You okay? Yeah, fine. One of the worst accidents I've ever seen at this end of the history.
Wasn't that bad. Well, I mean, that was just something to say because he stuck the microphone in my face and I didn't really want to talk, so I figured, well, what the heck, you know? I mean, as I walked off, I was a nervous wreck, but those things are going to happen. I don't care who you are. I mean, you go right down the line. Everybody in here has had one or two bad ones over the course of their career. I just happened to do it all in 1 year on national TV, so I got more, you know, ink off of it is all.
In 1986, Mike again got a lot of television coverage, but this time it was of a more positive nature. Dunn defeated Kenny Bernstein in the semifinals of drag racing's premier event, the NHRA U.S. Nationals, earning a berth in the final round. There, Dunn faced off with Billy Meyer, whose Labor Day weekend was straining the resources of the racing entrepreneur. For Dunn, the race must have seemed like a little bit of deja vu, with Meyer running his car dressed in the red and white Budweiser colors of Kenny Bernstein. A massive explosion on a qualifying pass earlier in the week had destroyed Meyer's original body, necessitating the loan from Bernstein.
Change stands a couple of times, and that doesn't happen too often in a drag race.
Oh yeah, that's when it's exciting, when you get them lead changes going down the track. It was a very good race. I got to give credit to Joe Paisano and Gary Slesher and the rest of the crew. They did a great job, and this is a lot. I like getting TV coverage this way better than the other way, let me tell you.
So I think everybody that has one of these things is on an ego trip, and I think what it's all about is to compete with the guys that are on tour all the time, and when you run half the races, or not even quite half the races as they do, and you can compete with them, I think it's a lot of fun.
At the 1983 NHRA Spring Nationals, favorite son Jim Head caught the crowd's attention, admittedly in a way he had not planned on.
It's at moments like that you're darn glad the engine's in the back, huh?
Yeah, I guess I am, but I guess we're talking about switching to funny cars, so maybe it won't be in the back next year.
After 2 years of campaigning top fuel directors, Jim Head did indeed make the move into funny cars. From the outset, Head proved he could run with the top gun. The owner of a construction company, Jim Head is among the last of a breed, an independent racer who can compete on an equal footing with the better financed, heavily sponsored teams. A bit of a maverick, Head has shown a daring willingness to experiment in order to stay competitive.
I don't think anybody could have this kind of dollars invested in something. We could call it a hobby to themselves. Other people might call me a hobbyist. It's definitely a second profession with me. I'm real serious about racing. Every year that goes on, I get more serious about drag racing. I really enjoy the sport, and I intend to continue.
Head surprised a lot of people in 1984, finishing runner-up at the NHRA Cajun Nationals, only his second race behind the wheel of a funny car. But Jim had a lot more surprises up his fire suit sleeve. At the 84 NHRA U.S. Nationals, Head stunned the racing community by advancing to the finals, where he matched up with defending race champion Kenny Bernstein.
Showing great composure here. Maybe it hasn't set in yet. You have won the U.S. National.
I can't believe it. I was already happy when I crossed the finish line.
It is a given that no two crew chiefs in funny car racing are likely to agree on the ideal combination. This is, after all, a sport where win light makes right, and crews are free to be creative to explore alternate solutions to the same problem. For Jim Head, it is this aspect of the sport that attracts him.
I think the race in drag racing is won in the pits by the mechanics. I think drag racing is the only form of motorsport that is truly a mechanic sport more than a driver sport. And to me, that's the beauty of drag racing.
In an age of electronic bells and whistles that control more and more of the functions that drivers used to have to handle manually, it's easy to understand the importance of the car's setup. But we are still a long way away from an era of nitro-burning slot cars.
I suppose theoretically you can definitely put them on rails. We could race slot cars, but there's a lot to drive in race cars, fuel cars. The fact that there's a driver in it's what makes it racing. There's no question about it.
There is no doubt, given Jim Head's success behind the wheel of a funny car, finding sponsor support for his second profession would be no problem. But for Jim, having to answer to someone else would taint the sport for him and dilute its appeal.
I don't race to eat. I don't race to please a boss or a sponsor or anyone else. I race for myself, and some of the pressures put on some of my fellow competitors, I can't believe it. I'm not going to turn a sponsor down, there's no question about it, but on the other hand, there's no chance of me being an employee of anybody's.
Roland Leong, the native Hawaiian whose cars have always bared the name of his home state, has been a successful car owner since the day he entered his first national event in 1965. 25 years later, Roland continues in the sport, a successful businessman who has learned the key to winning, but never forgets to keep the bottom line in mind.
Being consistent to me is the most important thing. But when the car runs good, you win a lot of races, and when it runs like beep, you won't win anything, right?
Leong's stable of drivers over the years reads like a who's who in drag racing. In 1986, Johnny West added his name to the list. But more than a driver, West also skins knuckles with the rest of the crew.
If I don't stay busy working on the car, I'd probably get so nervous I'd just start throwing up inside the helmet. You know, so I like to stay busy. I like to work on it, and it keeps me relaxed working on the car. It keeps me more at an even keel throughout the race.
There are those who approach funny car racing strictly as a sport and who are willing to put everything they have into that one chance to win. And then there are teams like Roland Leong and Johnny West who approach racing as a business, who gauge success by more than just the finish line. Winning is important, and the two have had their share of victories, finishing in the top 10 of the Winston points chase their first 2 years together. The successful businessman racer, like Roland or Johnny, learns that a single race is part of a bigger picture, and to be successful means having the wherewithal to still be in business come the season's end.
It almost sounds like you're now less of a racer and more of a businessman whose office happens to go 260 miles an hour?
Pretty much it. That's how I look at it. I don't look at it so much as a driving job. It's just, it's another job. It was another opportunity. We've really taken advantage of it. It's like overrated production line where every week we're doing basically the same thing, only trying to step up the operation just that much quicker. Every week we go to another racetrack.
You can't let your ego get ahead of your pocketbook, because then there's always next week. And at times that's hard for a lot of us, because when we come to the races, we got one thing in mind, is to run the fastest and quickest we can and try to win the race. That's our basic goal.
Bruce Larson is another veteran racer who knows the limitations of a tight budget. A longtime fixture in East Coast funny car racing, Larson got the budget he needed to go full-time racing on the NHRA circuit in 1987, when he joined forces with Top Fuel racer Joe Amato and his crew chief Tim Richards.
Joe called me and said that he wanted to add a funny car to his team. He had tried running a funny car and a Top Fuel dragster, which was his ultimate goal, and he found that it was just a little bit rough to handle both classes properly. So we built a brand new car, state-of-the-art car, and we got started with a deal that I guess is just about the nicest deal that a guy like me could ever find.
Larson began racing funny cars in the mid-60s, when the number of different functions a driver had to perform were fairly minimal. By comparison, a modern funny car is home to a growing number of complex systems controlling various functions on the machine, requiring the driver to do more, but in a lot less time.
Just before I stage the car, after I pre-stage, but before I stage, I pull this lever back, and it raises the fuel pressure from about 90 pounds to 150 pounds. So we're holding the brake hard, waiting for that first and only yellow light. You see the yellow light, you're on the throttle wide open and off the brake, holding on for 5 seconds. The shift comes at approximately 4 seconds. Right away we reach for the parachute.
To create consistency, the key to winning, timers now control many of the functions on funny cars, but neither timers nor computers can ever control a driver's most important function, leaving the line on time. In 1988, Bruce Larson advanced to the finals of the NHRA Cajun Nationals, where he was matched against Kenny Bernstein. With a hole shot, Larson outdrove the defending Winston champion to take his first ever NHRA National event win.
Well, they say it's a disease for which there is no cure, and that's probably the easiest way to answer it. I did it for a lot of years, and I just can't quit. I love it, and I think the crew loves it.
Once upon a time, funny cars had a single fuel pump, feeding a single line that distributed fuel to the engine. The fuel system is the lifeblood of a nitro-burning engine, and just like everything else on the modern funny car, it has grown in complexity over the past several years. One man who has charted the changes fuel systems have undergone is Sid Waterman, a 21-year veteran of nitro racing.
We've made so many changes in the last 4 or 5 years, we're really having a hard time keeping up with what we've done. But yet, we have not gotten into the timed port systems yet. We haven't gotten into a real high-pressure system yet. There really are more advancements to be made. We're really scratching the surface right now.
Today's fuel systems, sucking up to 32 gallons of fuel a minute, utilize 2 separate pumps to feed fuel into and through the engine. One fuel pump feeds fuel through a barrel valve on the side of the blower into the 2-cylinder head. The fuel is run through the block into 2 nozzles per cylinder. Each nozzle has its own jet that can be changed to fine-tune the amount of fuel being fed into the cylinder. The second fuel pump feeds through a second barrel valve into a block at the back of the supercharger. Up to 40% of the nitro used is fed through the supercharger to cool it.
If it's too rich, it can hydraulic, which means basically the engine explodes from compression of fuel. If it's too lean, it will melt pistons and it'll backfire and cause an explosion. So it's a very fine line.
Ed the Ace McCullough, over the course of a 20-year career, has learned the danger of running on the fine line between disaster and victory. McCullough is one of Funny Car's original stars, building a reputation as one of the gutsiest drivers in the sport, a man who long ago came to terms with the inherent dangers of his profession.
This is maybe not the right way to say it, but I'm really not afraid to crash in that car. I think the car's a safe car. Obviously, I don't want to crash in the car, but if it happens, I know that I'm going to come out of it okay. I have to give a lot of credit to the sanctioning bodies with the rules, regulations that we have. If you want to sit around and think about the bad experience and not get back in the car, then you probably won't, because sometimes they are bad experiences. And best thing is just forget it. I mean, chalk it up as experience, get back in the thing and do your job.
McCullough has proved himself capable of recovering from crashes and fires a number of times. Now, this ability to put the unfortunate incidents behind him, to go back out and win, is an important part of his legacy. Case in point, the 1987 Chief Auto Parts Nationals. Having run a national elapsed time record 5.36 seconds during eliminations, McCullough came into the finals looking to both back up his record and to claim his first win of the season.
To pick this one off on the world's best track and set the record, you backed it up at 5:41. You are the quickest of them all.
All right, Steve-O. You wouldn't even give me a clue.
No, not till you get that helmet off.
Let me tell you, this is great. I mean, we went through the guys today. This is what drag racing's all about.
Little kiss from Raymond Badel.
Raymond.
I don't know if that's a reward or not.
There's nothing better than winning. And a lot of times, if you could hear me, if you go whistling down through there the last round at a national event and you don't see the guy and you're going into the lights, and I mean, you know you've got the race won. I mean, I holler and shout, you know. I mean, nobody hears it, but I do, you know. I mean, emotionally, it's great. It's a great feeling.
Ed McCullough's crew chief on the Larry Minor-owned Funny Car team is Bernie Federle, a longtime veteran of the top flight competition that is NHRA Championship drag racing. Prior to taking over on McCullough's car, Federle was crew chief for Gary Beck's Top Fuel dragster during Beck's successful bid for the Winston World Championship in 1983. Through the highs and lows at our racing's emotional roller coaster, Bernie has learned to get the job satisfaction where he can.
The satisfaction, I believe, comes in the actually seeing the race car go down the track. When a big number comes up in the scoreboard, so much the better. It's seeing the realization of your labor during the week, I guess, is really the key element for me. It's the challenge of the sport.
Two of the most critical elements in funny car racing are elements the racers can't control. The weather, which affects the tuning of the car, and track conditions. Years of experience have taught Bernie how to read a track to optimize the car's performance.
We've always attached a lot of significance to that, and I think that it serves us fairly well. It's not that you're always going to make the right judgment call, but it certainly increases your odds compared to just going out there dead cold and take your chances. We look to see if the rubber is basically well bonded to the concrete. We look to see if it might be rolling up somewhat, which would lessen traction. We look at check the surface temperature, perhaps. We try and pick our spot on the track, of course, side to side. Humidity becomes a real big factor when the temperature is high because you're displacing so much oxygen with water. You have to try and trick the car into burning more fuel volume than it would want to in those situations. In order to produce maximum amount of power, you have to burn a volume of fuel. So we would probably try and get a little more clutch in the car, load the motor a little heavier, maybe taller gear ratios, perhaps. That's one consideration. Things of this nature all seem to be an influence. It depends on your combination a lot, really, how you approach it. Some some cars will respond to a particular change, and others won't. We just, you know, everyone's a different animal. That's what makes it so challenging.
Success at anything, whether it be life in general or racing in specific, requires dedication, a focused commitment. During the winter leading up to the 1988 season, Ed McCullough took that commitment a step further. While Bernie and the crew worked on lightening their car, Ed was working on losing some weight of his own. Bernie and company were able to trim nearly 100 pounds off the car's weight. Ed lost almost 50.
I had to make my mind up. What is my goal? My goal, I want to give it total commitment, a total effort in trying to win a world championship. If I have to lose some weight to do this, I'm going to do it.
I feel like I got low ET in me.
You do, but it's so far in you, we'll never see it.
Don Prudhomme's career stretches back 3 decades and includes success in both Top Fuel Dragsters and funny cars. A 4-time Winston World Champion, Prudhomme is the winningest funny car driver in NHRA competition. Throughout his career, Prudhomme has always been a hands-on kind of guy, involved with every aspect of the car's operation.
This day and age, there's a lot of drivers that don't work on the car because they don't really need to, but all in all, I think it's a plus. Knowing what it's doing when it goes down the quarter mile, if it's dropping a cylinder, if you're in trouble, to get off the accelerator, to shut the engine off, that's a real plus.
When Don won his first NHRA national event in 1965, a team generally consisted of the driver and one other person. 10 years later, when Don began his 4-year reign as #1, the crew had grown in response to the increasing amount of work the car required between rounds of racing. For most teams, this meant 2 crew members in addition to the driver. By 1988, drag racing had grown into a true team sport, with as many as 5 crew members working on the car between rounds, all pulling together for a common goal.
Well, in 1970 or 1965, perhaps teamwork wasn't that important. And nowadays, it's no different in football, basketball, or anything. You have to have a good team, because my guys make some real critical decisions out there, and I can't say enough for them. They're as responsible for winning these races as I am. And for them to get along and to not have hassles and problems out the track as one guy got dirty and the other guy didn't, that's a big deal, as small as it may seem, but those little petty things happen in any kind of racing, and if they can keep together and keep their heads together, it really works out for a good team.
Most of the crew's time is spent in the pits between rounds working on the car, but they also have responsibilities on the track, and watching them go through the various steps of the staging procedure is like watching a choreographed dance. For someone like Prudhomme, who for so long made all the major decisions that affect a car come race day, teamwork has meant relying more on the crew to help make those important decisions.
You know, I have a great crew, and they do such a great job on it till we discuss all those things and perhaps sit down in the morning for breakfast and go through our game plan once the car is all prepared for the race on the air conditions and things like that. And then just not my decision. We all make a decision together on how to run the car that day. Going into the race, we're not 100% sure, or else I'd be counting the money right now.
The level of funny car competition in 1988 shows how important teamwork has become. Through the first 6 NHRA national events, 6 different racers had emerged victorious. For Don Prudhomme and his young crew, their chance to become the 7th different winner in 7 events came at the NHRA Grand Nationals.
It's awfully nice, Steve. You know, we've struggled to get here, and if it wasn't for Skoll and Pontiac, I don't think we'd make it.
The race itself, as far as your car was concerned, he broke early.
Yeah, my car was breaking up the last round, and the last couple of rounds it wasn't really swift, but we're just trying to do the best we could do. You know, with these things, it can go either way. We ran decent today, though. I don't feel like we backed into it.
It was teamwork that brought Don victory in Canada, and it was teamwork that put Don into the finals of the next NHRA event, the Summer Nationals, with a chance to become the first driver of the season to win 2 races. In a sport where being professional often means playing it cool, John Force stands out from the crowd, a man whose emotions seem to just gush out of him.
You want some good news? Yeah. Lane choice with a 561 over Bernstein.
You need that over Bernstein. I want to say something. A lot of people are back in this race car, and she loses a lot. We know that. She runs quick, and she loses. Me and Coyle, we fight and wrestle weekly. But I tell you something, people don't know what it takes to be champion. We may lose the next one, we may not. But right now, what we've been trying for the last month is finally starting to work. Eaton was starting to worry Coyle.
Excitable, demonstrative, vivacious, a John Force interview after a win is as thrilling as the race itself.
John Force, a final round. You're headed there with 557.
57. It's about time. We've as you know, the red cars beat us up so many times, and it hurts. It hurts after a race to, in all sincerity, lay in bed sick, and it hurts. And this time, don't care what happens in the final. We don't have to go to bed hurting or disbelieving in this team. We've all done well. I get sidetracked a lot in my interviews, and sometimes I've heard your people at Diamond P say so many times, well, I heard it, but we don't know what he said. Well, I don't know what I said. I have to go back and watch the interviews, and I laugh at myself because sometimes I can't believe, why would I say that? Where did that come from? My wife sits there, gets up, and gets coffee because she says, you embarrass me. Sitting here in our own house watching TV, she says the things that you say.
There's something about John Force's career that's reminiscent of a country western ballad. A former truck driver who headed down under to Australia so he could race funny cars. Force is a kind of blue-collar working man success story.
You know, I was driving a truck and picking up National Dragster and reading it and wishing to God I could be part of that, and I finally am part of it, and I think I have a fear of losing it and having to go back, and I think that's why I work so hard.
Force is currently one of the hottest drivers going in funny car racing, but his first few years as a driver were a tale of hard luck. Force seems to do things in a big way, and his bad luck was no exception.
The safety equipment, what we should do without it.
Save my butt. What could you do?
When we saw the white smoke, that's when the fire bottles hit, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Save me. I love it.
Despite his streaks of bad luck, John Force has had success in drag racing, including finishing in the Winston top 10 for 3 straight years. But between 1979 and 1987, Force compiled one of the least enviable records in funny car racing. 9 straight final round appearances without a national event win. Despite the streak, or maybe in spite of it, Force never gave up trying to win his first big national event. When Force met Ed McCullough in the finals of the 1987 NHRA Grand Nationals, he was determined to overcome his final round jinx. 2 months later, Force was in the finals of the Big Bud Shootout, the special funny car race held in conjunction with the U.S. Nationals.
I was never thinking $50,000 in the Bud Shootout. I got out at the other end and I was looking at the start line, hoping to God nobody was going to say I red lighted or I crossed the outside line, because I think I would have had a heart attack if they would have told me that.
Part of the credit for John Force's success over the past few years belongs to his crew chief, Austin Coyle. They teamed up in 1985, but it was not until 1987 that the two reached their full potential as a team. Coyle's career as an engine tuner dates back to the heyday of funny car racing, when he was part of the famed Chi-Town Hustler. In 1982 and 83, on a shoestring budget, Coyle, with Frank Hawley driving, stunned the racing world by winning back-to-back Winston championships.
10, 15 years ago, a guy could be a top dog and maybe only spend $100,000 a year. So it's really escalated in cost over the years. Our operation goes through close to $1 million a year. We haven't quite hit that figure yet, but in that neighborhood. These cars are so complex now compared to what they were before, and the maintenance of all these systems is so great that whereas you used to frequently see a team with perhaps a driver and a crew chief and one other crewman, and now, you know, almost all the teams are 6, 7 people, and judging from what we've been doing lately, we think there ought to be a couple more so these guys could have some time off.
The recent successes of Force and Coyle point out the importance of the driver-crew chief relationship, the critical link in the team concept of funny car racing.
It's really funny because my crew chief, Austin Coyle, I mean, he run the Chi-Town Hustler. They were world champ for years, and when he came over here, it actually aggravates him sometimes that right before a round we'll be in the middle of discussing something, and all of a sudden a kid will yell, "Forrest, can I have a signature?" and I'll walk away. And it makes him mad. And one day he come out to the ropes and he said, "Forrest, if I get in line for an autograph, do you think we can talk?" And it kind of became a joke with us, but the truth is, of all the things that we go through, I know what the car needs. I know what I need to do as a driver. He tells me the way he sets it up, how he wants me to drive it, and that's all I need to know basically, and not a whole lot of thought goes into it.
In the words of my girlfriend, you don't work for John, you guys are married. We get along pretty good. We have our differences of opinion, of course, which is just good, healthy competition. The driver-crew chief situation, the way it is right now, it's really important that the two have a lot of faith in each other, because we're in an era now to where we see continual development on a week-to-week basis. And, you know, when you're trying new things and trying to develop new deals, that the faith in one another, whether things are going right or not, to keep on and do your best and work out your deals is a real important factor.
No matter how close a driver and crew chief, there will always be times, as in any good marriage, when the temptation to point fingers comes up. But like a good marriage, if a driver and crew chief are to succeed, they have to overcome the desire to blame and be willing to accept, even joke about, the miscues.
I should have stayed with the regular game plan. The car's been fast all day. I mean, Austin's had it right on, and my shot came, and I really thought when I cut it, I seen the red. I was dead, but I thought I was doing a hell of a job till I seen that red, and then it kind of fell apart.
Well, we figure we got the computer fixed now, and it won't red light at this race. We go to every race knowing we're supposed to do well, and of course, what makes a person, you know, the most nervous and tense about all of that is if you feel you can win this race, if you don't do anything wrong, well, that puts all of us under the gun, the driver, the tuner, all the guys on the crew. You know that if you do your very best, you can be in the winner's circle.
Austin Coyle and John Force have traveled a long road to reach the top of funny car racing, to be among the elite. Their racing marriage, driver and crew chief, gives them the support to work through the nervous times being at the top brings, to return again and again to the winner's circle.
Congratulations, John.
Is that good?
Oh, perfect. Everybody expected you to smoke the tires. It was the other way around.
Diamond P wasn't there at Montreal. They're finally here, thank God. Somebody's here to save me.
That's right.
It's really amazing. Driving these race cars is something, and I did the dry, and Coyle looked in and said, "We're in trouble, buddy, and all that's left is the dashboard. Can you believe planning on a dashboard to win a race?" And I flipped a few buttons, and that old heap worked. I can't believe it.
Mechanically, one of the keys to the success of John Force and Austin Coyle has been the development of the multi-stage lock-up clutch, drag racing's newest technical breakthrough.
I personally take credit for at least co-inventing it. People are learning that there was considerably more performance to be gained by having complete control over the clutch than anyone had ever thought probable years ago. Of course, you know, working with computers is what has taught us what's going on in there, and, you know, once you see a need, you learn how to fulfill that need. That is, if you're any good at it.
The development of the multi-stage lock-up clutch points out the importance of the relationship between race teams, always on the lookout for newer and better, and component manufacturers like AFT and L&T, companies always on the lookout for ways to help teams extend the performance envelope.
The clutch takes the power from the crack of the throttle and tries to transmit it to the tire. The tire can't spin too much. If it spins too much too soon, it'll smoke the tire, lose momentum, and end up just frying the tires.
There are three primary elements to the new clutch system: the floater and slider disc, the main assembly, which includes the levers that dictate the various stages, and the throwout bearing built into the bell housing.
You basically have 4 discs with floaters in between. The floaters are stationary against the stands, so that clutch and floaters all rotate the same. The disc is what's either grabbing or not grabbing. If the disc grabs too much, we have our tire spin. If the disc doesn't grab enough, you see all that black dust coming out the can. This is the primary stage of levers. It has a large amount of counterweight, a lot of counterweight, and these 6 levers are what you see on the dry and the initial leave past the Christmas tree. The second stage levers are side by side with the third, second versus the third. The arms are gonna keep applying more pressure and try to stop the disc from slipping too much against the floaters. The levers, second and third stage, are making contact on the bearing, so the bearing is spinning, and the arms are making contact. Really, the arms, second, third stage, go along for a ride until the bearing goes back, and that set of arms can then apply.
There are a variety of ways a team can decide to activate the throwout bearing, and more importantly, when to activate it. But basically, all use a system of timers to trigger the mechanism as the car streaks down the track. There's a saying that gasoline's for washing parts, alcohol's for drinking, and nitro's for racing. But round for round, some of the closest, most exciting racing to be found happens in Top Alcohol Funny Car. In 1987, 24-year-old Pat Austin dominated Alcohol Funny Car racing, winning his first NHRA Winston Championship. Pat's driving abilities are part of the reason he's been so successful, but equal credit goes to his brother Mike and father Walt.
We all get along real well, and we work together as a team. You know, you could ask any one of us what to, to do something, we can do it. I mean, everybody can do everything in the car, and that's what you need. You know. My dad's the one that he's the one that makes the decision on, you know, what jets to put in, how much lead to run, and basically the motor combinations. He just tells us what to do, and we put them together. We got Mike, who's my brother, and he's the one that, you know, at the races, he leads up the show. He tells us when to go, you know, what to do as far as relating from my dad to us.
The Winston Championship in '87 was, for Pat, especially sweet, because the year before he had lost the title by a mere 2 points.
The World Championship to me personally is something that nobody's ever going to be able to take away from me, because I feel that anytime the competition is as stiff as it is in any category in NHRA drag racing, if you come out a winner at one time a year at a national event, you know, I figure you're doing well. And even if you qualify at all of them, you're doing well. But winning the World Championship to me was just, it's something that you know, when I'm 65 years old, I'm going to sit around and I guarantee I'm going to be talking about it.
Over the past several seasons, the competition in alcohol funny car has become intense, with a few thousandths of a second often the margin of victory. Like in the Nitro class, driver ability off the starting line is the difference between winning and losing, and how comfortable a driver is in the cockpit becomes that much more important. To keep himself calm and relaxed, Pat Austin has developed several superstitions.
Well, when I put my fire suit on, I got $2 silver. I got one in each pocket, and I rub them a little bit, you know, and I think about, that basically calms me down a little bit, because I get kind of hyped up, and doing something that makes me feel comfortable, more comfortable what I'm doing, you know, I'm for it. If I walk around, see a penny sitting around anywhere, I put them in my shoe, and I've had, you know, probably up to 25 in each shoe at one time. And the worst one that I got is that once we go into a race and the car runs good, say if it runs good on Thursday, I don't change my underwear throughout the race. I change it when I go back to the motel, I take them off. When I come out the race the next day, I have the same pair of underwear on. The reason why I do that is because I feel as a driver, a lot of the things, you know, driver will say, oh, I had to do this because I was, you know, it was spinning the tires. Well, you don't have time to think, you just have time to do stuff by the seat of your pants, and I figured once you're doing it right, why change? And that's why I don't change my underwear.
Whether it's nitro or alcohol in the fuel tank, success in funny car racing depends on driver ability and crew quality. In 3 short years of racing, the entire Austin family has shown they have the stuff of champions. For 20 years, the names of Paul Candies and Leonard Hughes have appeared together on the side of winning race cars. More than just a successful team, Candies and Hughes embodied the dual spirit of funny car racing. A love of competition, the closer the better. A love of experimenting, the quicker the better.
Actually, it was in super stock days. Then we went to injected funny car. Then we went to a fuel funny car, and we stayed there for a few years. And then when I quit driving, we went to a dragster with Richard Tharp.
In 1976, Richard Tharp drove the Candies and Hughes dragster to a Winston World Championship, winning 2 national events, including the U.S. Nationals. In 1981, Mark Oswald took over the driving duties of the Candies and Hughes dragster. The next year, Mark won 2 national events and finished second in the Winston point standings. For 1983, Candies and Hughes switched from a dragster to a funny car. Oswald was instantly competitive, and the team again finished second in the Winston points.
At that time, it was an economic reason. The top fuel class was kind of at a standstill there. It wasn't really growing very rapidly. And we had a big budget. You know, we were spending a lot of money on the race car, and the funny cars were getting all the major sponsors at that time.
The battle for the Winston World Championship in 1984 was one of the closest in history. As the season closed out in Pomona, California, 3 drivers were still in contention. Mark Oswald held the points lead, but he was closely followed by Kenny Bernstein, and Billy Meyer. As eliminations began, all eyes concentrated on these 3 cars. Meyer was able to get by Jody Smart in the first round to stay in the hunt. Oswald, who held a 2-round lead over Bernstein in the points, beat John Force to advance. For Bernstein, his hopes of a world championship ended in the first round, the victim of a Sherm gun hole shot. Still nursing an outside chance of passing Oswald in the points, Meyer got by Poldi in the second round. But Oswald did the same, beating Tom McEwen. In the semifinals, Meyer met up with Sherm Gunn, who had followed his defeat of Bernstein with a victory over Don Prudhomme in the second round. With Meyer out of competition, the World Championship was officially Mark Oswald, but there was still a race to be won. In the finals, Sherm Gunn, the giant killer, beat Oswald. Mark had lost the battle, but won the war. He was the new Winston World Champion.
Naturally, when you're racing the guys that have a chance to beat you, it's all on the line right there, and it all came down to the last race, so it was really satisfying to win.
That's one of the things I have at home is we all get World Championship rings, and it's a very important part of your life.
Mark Oswald, Paul Candies, and Leonard Hughes won their Winston Championship on the basis of solid, consistent performances. But in 1985, that consistency fell off dramatically, and Oswald soon found he was having a hard time just getting through the first round of elimination.
Came back in '85, like you say, we just won the World Championship. We had a good combination, and we came out there in the first race, and the car ran real well, and we thought we were on our way again, and then we started having a fuel system problem, and we just could not correct it. I mean, we had new fuel pumps, and we could get it to run good we made good runs at every event, but we couldn't put them all together. We lacked consistency, and we fought it, I'd say through 3/4 of the year, and we just did terrible. We'd get put out first round, or we'd qualify well, get put out first round or second round at every event.
You have to run good, you have to run fast, but you have to, like I say, you got to be consistent. To go out there and make one big number is not what you're looking for. You're trying to run as hard as you can and repeat 4 or 5 times, or not just to go out and run one good time and then that's it.
By the start of the 1986 season, the Candies and Hughes car was thundering again, and the team found the consistency they needed to win races. Through trial and error experimenting, Paul and Leonard and Mark found the right combination to be able to run with the pace setters. The secret of success in racing is consistency, and the key to consistency is research and development. It takes time, money, and energy to modify parts or build your own, but it is an effort Mark Oswald and Leonard Hughes are willing to make in the pursuit of excellence.
It goes all the way from the chassis on down to the motor, you know. We get a race car completely built, and we darn near rebuild the whole thing before it ever goes out. It's just the way things go. And like the bodies, our bodies are built, you know, from scratch. We do it from all the way, bringing up from making the plug and the mold all the way to a finished product. Same way with the engine and driveline components. Everything you get needs to be modified or worked on.
Every week you're doing something different. Every run you're trying something different, and that's the way it's always been. You just keep trying all the time. We never go up there with the same thing twice until eliminations. And then we decide what we thought was best, and then we'll go from there.
I think my main attraction with drag racing, period, is the fact that it's not restricted quite as much as other forms of racing. I like the idea of being able to work on new projects and be more or less unlimited, and that's about the closest thing to unlimited racing you have anymore.
For most teams, computer monitoring systems have been a boon, helping them in their R&D work. But Leonard Hughes is of the old school. And while he recognizes the computer is here to stay, a part of him longs for the good old days of racing.
Well, to tell the truth, it actually helps. It does. But myself, I rather the old seat-of-the-pants racing where the guy goes out there and makes a decision, and that's how you win the races. Who can come up with the best ideas or who can make the right decision at the right time. I always like that, but this computer stage is here, and that's here to stay.
With the computer taking much of the guesswork out of engine tuning and clutch setup, funny car racing has become much more competitive. For a team like Candies and Hughes, this means having to run all out all the time.
Anybody that qualifies for the field is a potential to beat you and can step up at any time, so you have to run as hard as you can all the time.
I like it like this. This is the first time in years that there's 10 cars out there competitive instead of 1, 2, or 3. We've had years that we was ahead of everybody. We've had years we've been behind. But now the top 10 cars are all the same, and I kind of like it like that.
Winning will always be the easiest way to define success. But for Mark Oswald, Paul Candies, and Leonard Hughes, style also counts for something. As a team that embodies the spirit of funny car racing, they have proved that art is in the approach as well as the result. In art, in racing, in life, there are a handful of men who are more than leaders, more than trendsetters. They are the ultimate example. Kenny Bernstein is one of those men. The Winston champion for 3 straight years, Bernstein has successfully blended the business and sport of funny car racing.
That cockpit's really like an office. I sit in there and I say, oh, it's great to be back home again. It really feels that way. And the minute the engine starts and the body comes down, it's just like back to business again. It's back to the routine that you're so used to, that you do every day, the same, consistently, all the time, and that's the bottom line.
Bernstein's path to the pinnacle of the sport began in Texas in the 60s, where he raced everything from stock cars to top fuel dragsters. After dropping out of the sport in the early 70s to build up a chain of restaurants, Bernstein returned to racing in 1979. In 81, he landed the Budweiser sponsorship, and the rest, as they say, is history. Today, in addition to the Budweiser King Funny Car team, Kenny owns a successful NASCAR Winston Cup team, an IndyCar team, and a sports marketing company. Kenny Bernstein is recognized as one of the true innovators in the business of racing. His crew chief, Dale Armstrong, is also an innovator, recognized as one of the true geniuses of fuel racing. Considered the best paid crew chief in drag racing, Armstrong's work has revolutionized the sport over the past 5 years. A former racer, Armstrong was one of the top drivers in Pro Comp Eliminator. Nearly a decade after he retired from racing, he still ranks in the top 20 of all-time NHRA national event winners.
You said you didn't think they had final rounds with you in it anymore?
No, God, I haven't got by the first round this year yet.
This man has won Pro Comp in every conceivable type car. Funny car, dragster, roadster, you name it. Mr. Pro Comp, AA Dale Armstrong, and here comes one happy crew.
In 1980 and 81, Armstrong raced in fuel funny cars with more than a little success. He finished in the top 10 of the Winston points both years. Dale closed out his professional racing career in 1981 by establishing a new national elapsed time record. The next year, he went to work for Kenny.
I didn't want to drive anymore. That year I had gone through a pretty bad fire in Columbus and got burned a little bit, and And it just got where it wasn't that the fire really scared me bad or anything. It was just that the big thrill of driving them cars that you have when you first start or when you're young wasn't there anymore. And I just didn't feel comfortable. The trade-off, I guess, for the thrill, for the danger that was involved, I felt it just wasn't worth it, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I've always been more interested in the mechanical end of making the cars run anyway than driving them.
As a crew chief, Dale Armstrong has consistently set the standard in funny car racing. An innovator as much as an inventor. Some would tell you he is to the sport what Thomas Edison was to modern life. In 1984, Armstrong and Bernstein became the first funny car team to wind tunnel test its body. The result was a sleek, arrow-shaped Ford Tempo funny car that revolutionized funny car design. At the NHRA Gator Nationals that year, Bernstein became the first funny car driver over 260 miles per hour, primarily because of the new body shape.
.260, it sounds like science fiction.
It's getting that way, isn't it? I'm telling you, I don't know where it's going to stop. It's just going to get better.
Let's hope the winning doesn't stop for the Budweiser King and Kenny Bernstein. Here comes a crew that is second to none right now in funny car racing. Still cannot believe what they saw on the scoreboard. 260 miles an hour.
In '87, Dale and Kenny debuted a car that detractors nicknamed the Batmobile. Its radical shape prompted new rules limiting the amount of aero alterations a crew could make.
When you're out here running one of these cars and you have the success that Kenny and I have enjoyed in the last 3 years, you just have to realize that you're going to be the target of a lot of stuff like that. People are going to be wanting to slow you down or handicap you somehow, and you just have to accept some of that. I mean, that just comes with the joys of success, I guess.
Armstrong's most important contribution to drag racing has been the RacePak computer. But as revolutionary as the computer was, it was never designed to be a decision-making machine, nor can it ever replace grease under the fingernails knowledge.
These cars are so specialized that you're never going to know how to run one of these cars unless you get the hands-on experience. There's some technician isn't going to step in here and look at one of these cars, a nitromethane burning top fuel car, and say, oh no, it should be run this way in the motor. I can't see that happening. It's going to take hands-on experience, and the computer is just a real big asset, though, in giving you clues as to what is right or what is wrong and which direction to head.
But of all Dale's innovations and inventions, large and small, the most secretive one of all was hidden beneath a dirty white shop rag called the Terrible Towel. For almost 2 years, rumors ran rampant as to what was actually hidden underneath. The truth revealed, not nearly as spectacular as speculation, was a fuel control valve. The net total of all Dale's work was a performance edge for Kenny Bernstein that produced 3 of the most amazing years a racer could have. 9 final round appearances in '85 with 6 wins. 8 final round appearances with 5 wins in '86. 7 final round appearances and 7 wins in '87. The result, 3 consecutive Winston championships for Bernstein and Armstrong.
I've got to credit 99% of that to Dale Armstrong and the crew, and Armstrong's inventions that he came up with in those days. And it was just a situation of mechanically being a far superior race car than anyone out there. Made my life as a driver extremely easier for me because we seem to always have a cushion. We called it the 2/10 Bernstein cushion. When you have that, it really makes you as a driver certainly more confident and better because you have that cushion. But mechanically, that's really where it came from. It came from that side, and it really worked well for us for those 2.5 to 3 years.
During Kenny Bernstein's 3-year reign of power in funny car, the only team that was able to seriously challenge it was Candies and Hughes. In the bygone heyday of funny car match racing, rivalries were more a promotional gimmick, a way to hype the show. But the rivalry between Bernstein and Oswald was no hype, no publicity stunt. It was pure and simple, the two best cars meeting head-to-head.
Winning creates rivalries. Oswald and the Budweiser King car, the Motorcraft car, I mean, they've been in battles the last 5 years that have been some of the most beautiful racing in motorsports has ever seen in drag racing, and so that legend has grown.
It was not until the end of 1987 that Kenny and Dale showed signs of being human, of faltering. That sign came in the form of a fire that practically destroyed the Budweiser King.
If I went to my office every day and knew there was the potential of my office exploding, I might be a little hesitant.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, every time you crawl in these cars, that's a chance you take. You just hope that it doesn't happen or that mechanically they're as good as they can be. So that's part of why we drive, I suppose. That's part of the risk that we take as drivers, but I still enjoy it. I still love it. And I was ready to jump back in the car the next day and win a race. I wanted to show everyone around that we were tough. If those guys were hard enough to work all night and get it going, then I was going to uphold my side of it as best I could to show everyone that we were really a first-class championship deservable team to go out there and do that. And that's what we wanted to do. We didn't want to give it to them. As Dale said, I'll never forget the quote. He said, we can't just give it to them. There's no reason to. We can fix it. Let's do it. I said, let's go for it.
In our lives, we often find ourselves caught between two types of pressure. The pressure to perform for one moment at our absolute peak, and the pressure to repeat that performance. For Kenny and Dale, having accomplished the former, they must now deal with the latter.
I don't feel the pressure. I mean, it's funny, but I don't feel a pressure that way. I guess the pressure I feel is just my own drive wanting to do it again. I think that's the only pressure I feel is from within myself.
I think bottom line is if we had never been a world champion, there'd be more pressure. I think once you become a Winston world champion, they can never take that away from you. And that really, really, believe it or not, takes a ton of pressure off the shoulders. We've had 3 fabulous, beautiful years of racing, 85, 6, and 7 of being the Winston Championship. And they can never take that back away from this team. Consequently, that pressure of winning that championship is off. If we never win again, we've done it 3 times.
It is the role of visionaries, of artists blessed with a view into the future, to be the first to push back the frontiers. The incredible success of Kenny Bernstein and Dale Armstrong make clear the fact that they are indeed visionaries, artists of incredible sight. Ribbon of asphalt shimmers with the heat. Quarter-mile canvas, blacktop piano, awaits the artist's hand to give it life, to give it meaning. These are artists that breed apart. Heart and soul they give in fiery duels with thundering sculptures. Funny car racers, Nomex heroes, masters of the artistry of human endeavor.
Want the best seat in the house for motorsports entertainment? Then Diamond P Sports is your ticket for excitement. With over 35 spectacular titles from which to choose in the growing Diamond P inventory, you can build a home video library.